Imagine waking up exhausted every single day. Your joints ache, you forget simple words, and you lose your balance in a bright, ordinary room. You finally go to the doctor, desperate for answers. They run a full panel of blood tests, check your organ function, maybe even scan your brain. A week later, the results come back perfectly normal. Without clear biomarkers, the medical system struggles. Patients are often handed a broad label, like chronic fatigue syndrome, anxiety, or fibromyalgia, and sent home with treatments that manage the pain but do nothing to stop the physical decline. The reason these standard tests fail to find a root cause is that standard diagnostics look entirely inside the patient's body. They are searching for a broken internal system, missing the other half of the picture entirely. The biological threat originates in the structure itself, growing out of sight behind the drywall or up in the ceiling of a patient's home. This constant environmental exposure triggers a specific systemic illness called Chronic Inflammatory Response Syndrome, or CIRS. Treating CIRS requires a shift in how we practice medicine. You cannot isolate the biology of the patient from the architecture of their environment. The two are permanently linked. A sick building usually starts with water. This image shows a severely flooded interior with waterlogged structural elements, creating the perfect damp, humid environment for mold colonies to rapidly multiply. But a massive flood isn't required. A slow pipe leak, condensation, or a compromised building envelope can feed mold growth for years, entirely unnoticed inside HVAC systems, under floorboards, and deep within wall cavities. Hidden mold colonies actively produce mycotoxins, toxic compounds released directly into the air. These biotoxins hitch a ride on the ventilation system. Even if mold is isolated to a damp basement, toxins spread efficiently throughout the entire living space. Look at the deep structural decay and heavily stained wall plaster in this photo. This is a severe failure of building science and moisture control, creating a continuous source of airborne toxicity. For the majority of people, walking into a water-damaged building might cause mild irritation, but a healthy immune system quickly identifies the biotoxins and flushes them out naturally. This chart highlights a specific genetic difference. Roughly 1 in 4 people carry a genetic anomaly known as the HLA-DR gene variant. If you have this variant, your immune system is completely blind to these specific toxins. It doesn't recognize them as a threat, allowing the mycotoxins to bypass your basic defenses and remain trapped. Unable to clear the debris, the body goes into high alert. The trapped toxicity triggers a relentless cascade of inflammation across the brain, lungs, joints, and digestive tract, perpetuating an endless cycle of illness. This is entirely different from a standard mold allergy, which is just a simple immune reaction to spores. CIRS is a systemic poisoning caused by the chemical compounds the mold produces. Because the root cause is environmental, traditional medications will fail. The moment a patient breathes the air in their contaminated home, the toxic cycle instantly restarts. There is a strict rule in treating environmental illness. A doctor cannot heal a patient if the house remains sick. The exposure must stop completely. This blueprint illustrates a medical-grade remediation setup. To prevent cross-contamination, specialists establish strict negative pressure zones and deploy heavy-duty HEPA filtration for directional airflow. Contaminated drywall, insulation, and framing must be physically removed. Simply painting over affected surfaces leaves hidden toxins intact. Professional environmental remediation is a non-negotiable medical intervention. It is the literal foundation required for the patient's biological recovery to begin. With the environment secured, clinical treatment can start. Doctors use specialized diagnostics like CIRS-specific inflammatory blood markers, neurological vision screening, and genetic testing to map the damage. This sequence outlines the Shoemaker Protocol. Physicians systematically bind toxins, actively reduce lingering inflammation, and restore damaged function. Health requires time and heavy coordination between building scientists and medical professionals. With strict adherence, full recovery is entirely achievable. To pull patients out of the mystery of chronic illness, we have to stop treating the body in a vacuum. True health requires a simultaneous fight to cure both the biology of the patient and the environment they call home.